Hi, Fiona. Thank you so much for coming on Neuroscience Unplugged. Listeners, I want you to meet Fiona Gillespie. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Excited to talk about you, the mask behind professionalism, personalism. What is it that drives you? What makes you bounce back in those times that you think, what is going on? How you've helped your clients with consciously loving me. You've not only had lived experiences that you're applying to this, everything that you've trained for as well. Do you mind sharing with the listeners a bit more about what you do, consciously loving me, and what you're hoping to achieve in the future for your venture?
Consciously loving me has kind of just evolved throughout the years. I started as a therapist. Started learning about hypnotherapy 10 years ago and got certificated in different modalities. So it's just kind of it's kind of organically grown into this. But basically, I always struggled myself with relationships because went through big traumas when I was younger. So, it's just been like these wonderful learning modalities that I've learned have really just fallen into place like a jigsaw puzzle that just now I use these certain modalities and I use them all the time in my relationship. Whenever me and my husband fall out, which is totally natural and normal, and all those feelings come up, and I can go into like those younger versions of myself that want to run away and hide and want to make him bad and wrong and all of those things, so I really use these tools and techniques that I use with my clients because I know they work. Like, I'm the proof in the pudding. So it's like, I come back to myself and I self-inquire the untrue beliefs that I gave to myself in those times of trauma that are resurfacing and manifest in the present moment. And the reparenting techniques, I'll go back to them younger parts of myself that I help to feel safe and loved and valued. And that helps our central nervous system to rewire itself, to help us to feel safer within our bodies. And I love the emotional freedom technique. I use that as well, because if we have those really big emotions, not to make them bad and wrong again, but just to help us to move through them in a way where we're again helping our nervous system and our body to let go of that trauma. Every time we come back to ourselves and we say, we use these modalities and we're essentially saying to ourselves, you're safe, it's okay, you're safe. And people tend to think, but what if I'm not safe? What if my partner really is being, so it's important that we take that into consideration, but just ask ourselves, are we actually being harmed by them in this moment? And just keep coming back to ourselves, whether they are or they're not. Come back to regulation and then make an informed decision from a place of my mind's gone blank, of regulation. Yeah, of regulation. When we're in that part of our brain that is the rational part of our brain,
Yes.
instead of survival, we don't want to be making decisions from survival. Come back to safety within the body and then make your decision.
You've just unpacked so much in discussing the work that you're doing with your clients. And thank you so much for being really candid about your experience with your husband as well, because I think that speaks volumes about the person you are, because you're not just somebody who is learning from the book. You're learning and almost you've been the guinea pig to first try and test these theories and say, well, how these actually translate into real life is what I'm hearing. And you said, I'm going to do that for myself, right? I'm going to work out what is going to work best for clients when they come forward to me, which is just phenomenal. And it's so interesting what you say about coming from a place of fear, because especially when you've been hurt before in relationships, and we're not just talking romantic relationships, if we talk about a wider spectrum in terms of, in professional settings as well, even if you've been to a service provider and perhaps, the relationship that you've built with them, for example, is not so great. Take, the relationship you perhaps have with your clients. I mean, those types of relationships are so important. I know your work focuses on couples and romantic relationships, but it sparks something in me to think about actually all those individuals who perhaps are feeling what you described. How would you practically tell somebody to work through those feelings of fear, because as you said, that's conditioning from previous instances, and that's our body saying, okay, I need to keep you safe right now, which is why I'm going to protect you. So I'd rather you stay in that place of fear rather than get hurt, right?
Mm.
So how would you encourage somebody in that position to take a look at themselves and say, how or what should I do?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we can think to ourselves, like, it's funny, isn't it? I love spirituality, because it's like there's that paradox, isn't there, of like, feeling like if I let go of this, then I'm not safe. But really, what we're doing is we're manifesting more things to be fearful of if we keep hold of it, because we're going into that energy of fear and survival and destruction and sabotage. And then we create more of what we don't want. And so it's like bringing ourselves back to the love, back to the compassion, back to our self, our whole self, our real true
Our authentic
self.
selves. Yes, I love that.
Absolutely. And, our partners are a reflection of that. So, like they're scared, they're fearful, they're feeling all these things that we're feeling. So, and we know this from, you know, from there's certain modalities we can use, and we know that, and we know from digging with our partner that they are 99% of the time carrying exactly the same untrue belief about themselves in that moment. So it's really great to get to that. What is that untrue belief that I'm carrying about self right now? Like, what am I making this situation mean about me? And, usually, the core beliefs are like, I'm unworthy, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not loved. I think there's another one, but I can't remember what it is right now. But that there's so many, isn't there, that we control our everyday choices, unless we start to become more self-aware. And the more we become self-aware and we reflect on these and we look at our beliefs that we have running and we start to question them. I love Byron Katie's work. Do you know Byron Katie?
Please do share with the listeners more.
Byron Katie, yeah, apparently she wasn't the founder of this particular work, but it's self-inquiry work. So it's basically asking yourself like these key 4 questions that she has free on her website. You can just go onto there, scroll down, get her free. What it's called, the work. And the 4 main questions are: is that true? So we question the belief. Like, so say it's unworthy. So you say, okay, is that true? Am I unworthy? And in that moment, your ego is going to be like, well, yeah, of course. This situation is telling me I'm unworthy. I feel unworthy. This is true. It's not necessarily always going to be that, and be fluid with your aunt. Like, it's okay to have any answer, but generally we're like, you're a bit like our feet are in the ground with the first one, but then the second one is, was that 100% true? Are you always unworthy in every aspect of your life? And it's like, oh well, no, like in this moment, so like there's like usually that bit of a, oh well, no. And then with this is, actually, I'll just stick to the 4 questions right now, but there's another question we can go on to after that. But the next one is, well, how does that make you feel?
All of those questions, right? None make you feel nice, because you are having to face up to that shadow side of you, the bit that we like to squash on the subconscious. We don't want to deal with the bits that we don't like. If we did, it would become a lot easier, right? But it sometimes, just to get the process started, it takes a bit more time to accept that we do need to explore those sides so that we can work on ourselves as a whole. But as you said, those are really uncomfortable questions.
And that's the thing, though, isn't it? It's like we want to run away. Like we've like, a lot of us have not been taught about how to process through our feelings. So it's like we'll do anything, and most of us deflect. And it's like, I feel hugely uncomfortable right now, so it's your fault. You're the best. That's how I found myself in conflict resolution, because it's like, yeah, it's just a case of we have to bring our focus back to us. It always has to come back to us. And the last question is just, who would we be if that concept couldn't even exist? Like, that you could even possibly be unworthy. Like, it's just this realm and how it's set up. Like that, we believe these complete untruths about ourselves, but maybe, just maybe, we agreed to this polar opposite, these polar opposites so that we could experience, that flip side, like you say, the shadow side. And then it can make us realize, self-realization, this, okay, well, maybe that is just a belief. Maybe it's just a belief it's creating right now my reality. And my partner has exactly the same belief. And that's mind blowing, isn't it? It's like, oh my God, it brings, sorry, it brings it home to like how we are one entity, like, and to be whole, it's like noticing these things within us, knowing thyself, like knowing our mind and like how it works, and just being okay with it, and being kind to it, and questioning it, and then letting it bring us back to this place of, like, I've got goosebumps because it can be so empowering, but like you say, to begin with, it's a bit like, oh, I don't want to have to go here. But you've got to go through the dark tunnel to get to the light.
You can tell when you're sharing your experiences that you will have been to the darkest place that you perhaps have felt, to be able to reach a point and say, I know now how it's possible to reach that. What I'm really interested in finding out, Fiona, and as comfortable as you're sharing, how did you find yourself moving through that darkness? What techniques did you use that you can reflect on and say, okay, I know this worked for me, or maybe this didn't work?
You're taking me back to a time where I was thinking, gosh, I feel like I can relate to that person who said, you're in that darkness, and you can't see light at the other end of the tunnel, but you just keep moving one step further in front of the other, and going towards the light that you can't even see. It's like, it's blind faith, isn't it? It's literally blind faith. So when I first started out on this journey, I first learned hypnotherapy. And so with any type of healing modality, you go into you practice on each other. So, and I would say I don't use a lot of hypnotherapy now, but I used to use it with other people, and I was practicing with and clients, and it would work extremely well. But for me, I always felt like I'm just not sure about it. And so now you're making me think, well, maybe it did, like, maybe it was just subtle twists to the cogs of getting me towards where I needed to go. Um, so that, I guess that did, it must have helped me back in the day. And just having was spiritually awoken. So having my spiritual teacher around, who would give me these wise insights, and, um, I mean, some of it helped me to spiritual bypass, I must say. But I still found no judgment towards her. It's just I think, again, it's just part of our natural process, isn't it? We'll go in different directions, and, oh, that works, and, no, that doesn't work, and you know and all of this stuff. But yeah, trying to think what else there was, until I found these three core modalities that I found just works so well. I just Yeah, there was the hypnosis, and there was just these. I think when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Like, you will always call in those people. Like, it's vibration, isn't it? So it's like these people show up, and they'll just take your hand and help to lead you there with whatever it is that you need with what resonates.
And you said that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right?
Mm.
But the student first has to know and be ready to accept that help, right? Because it's so easy when you're in such a dark space to feel quite defensive and feel like the world is against you, and that you're isolated and you have nobody around you. And sometimes that is the case, even though you physically may have family and friends around you, they don't necessarily understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
Right? So you, at some point, when you were going through this darkness, will have accepted that I can't do anything for myself right now, and it's okay to get help, which I've witnessed in so many people when they're going through this darkness. They really struggle to accept external help. I'm not just talking about, like you said, hypnotherapy or, spiritual teachers or external services. Just accepting that it is possible to even play with the fact that they can come out of this darkness. And even just listening to other stories or suggestions can feel so overwhelming at the time. that it's just knowing it's okay to just listen. So going back to when you're going through that darkness, where do you think you had that conversation with yourself to say, it's okay, I would love some support right now? Like you said, when you're speaking to the universe and you're saying, help me, please, at what point did you find yourself saying, I relinquish all trust in myself and I'm giving it to you to guide me in what I need next?
Oh, that's given me such goosebumps. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying now, and I really do feel that it is really it's so invaluable when people hold space for us. When they hold that space, I think a lot of people deter themselves because of finances and this, that, and the other. But it's like it is so invaluable to have someone that can hold it all. That you can be the biggest mess ever, and they say it's okay, it's all right for you to be like angry, frustrated, rageful. It's okay, you're just being human. You're reacting in a way that's totally natural. It's your physiology and your biology that is at play here, and it's okay, because like you say, with the family members, and we can all get a bit, we still do, because we're humans, and we have those moments where we're like, oh, I can't deal with you right now.
Yeah, I've got my own stuff going on. I can't be dealing with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But when we're holding space for someone and it's in a therapeutic session, it's like bring the whole of you, bring everything in, and that is essentially what we are teaching people, is that there are safe people out there, and there are people who can hold everything, and you are safe in everything, and let's teach your body that. Let's teach your body.
Exactly. So you said again, teach. You're using this word so much in your language. Let's teach. Let's look for the teacher. So, you have found methods that worked for you. What was the process of that? How did you do that? Because you're at a point in your life when darkness was ensuing everything, right? So when we think about mental and physical and emotional and spiritual energy, all the types of energies that exist, they're obviously at a point of depletion. It's like, okay, you know what? I've got nothing left, let's try what's out there. And that's, for me, is what resilience is. When no matter what is going on, you will still try and find a way to work through it, regardless of the lack of support, regardless if, for example, like you said, hypnotherapy didn't work. You didn't just give up. You didn't say, okay, none of these methods are working, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stay in the situation I'm in and I'm going to accept it, which we know happens a lot, right? So what I'm trying to find out, I'm trying to get into Fiona's resilience. Those points of where you're talking about learning, what led you to read a book or go on the internet or join a course or reach out? Like, what was the driver behind it?
I say just like it's like nothing. It was my intuition. It was definitely, like that voice that was, I was I'm an ex-drug addict. So, like 16 years ago, I remember sitting on my sofa and, I can't remember whether I was actually on a come down or what, but I remember thinking, like, you've got to stop effing your life up and putting yourself in these situations that are so dangerous. And, you know, and I remember thinking to myself, like, you've got no choice. You've got to do something for yourself. Like you can go to, like, and I'm not poo-pooing the NA or anything like that. But for me, my personal experience was I could stand up in front of a group of people and speak about my stuff, but it was always going to be me that had to change it. Like, I didn't think about the community of other people and people coming together and holding me, and I didn't know about that side of things. So I just thought, I am the only one that can step up for me. Like, I have to do this. Like, I have to change. I have to change what's going on. I have to, like, make different choices. And I remember having this, like, forward vision of me being like probably the woman I am now, sitting reading books. And yeah, and I remember saying to my friends at the time, I don't want to be this woman that I am now. I want to be this woman who is intelligent, who reads books, who, is just, and I remember having that profound thought, and they said never change, like never change.
Wow.
It was so.
I mean, Fiona, wow, thank you so much for sharing that because, and for listeners who don't know, NA is Narcotics Anonymous, but what you shared in that is just monumental because, like you said, you're very honest about it. You're saying, I don't care about the community right now. I need to do what I need to do to get through what I need to. And that is hard, right? When we know from physically, psychologically, that is so, so hard. So the fact that you could put yourself in that position, but also be so self-aware to realize that I don't want this right now and I need to be doing something else and I need to create that myself. I mean, that takes another level of self-awareness, genuinely, because sometimes even just going through the process of NA is a task in itself, right? Let alone achieving the next step of saying, what kind of person do I want to be? That normally comes after, a lot longer after. When perhaps, and this is something I've witnessed, that it can sometimes take years for individuals to let go of themselves. They grieve almost that person they used to be, right? And only then can they start exploring who it is that they want to be. You, Fiona, managed to do that in parallel. I was like, damn, this is what I'm talking about, and I remember from the very first time that we connected through Sarah, I just, I didn't know anything about you, but I could tell you were resilient all the way through. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, you could vision who it is that you wanted to be, and you actively created that person. Like you said, you want to be this person and be reading these books. That's what you're doing. And you're not only reading these books, you're now creating courses, you've created a business around it, you're helping other people through it. And I definitely see a big book for you. So not only are you reading books right now, it's something that I feel like you're going to be writing one in the future about your experiences. I mean, I genuinely want to just take this moment to say, wow, like that's huge, like, genuinely so huge. And this is just a snippet of your path, of how you got from A to B, right? And now you're helping people. Honestly, that Fiona, that's amazing. Like it blows my mind how resilient you are and how you've come back from that and become such a stronger self. Like I genuinely would never know you'd been through those things. And it's not just the recovery stage. People often only know you as a certain person, right? They've only witnessed you as a certain person, and friends, family. When suddenly you strip away those layers and you're perhaps introducing no layers, that support network can change because those people often don't recognize who you are anymore. They don't necessarily relate with you. And sometimes it's a two-way street that you can't necessarily relate with them either. And some friends and family will stick by you through this transition. Some people may not, because for others who perhaps are feeling triggered by your transition, it can be a lot of work for them because you're now saying, okay, you know what? I'm setting the bar up here. It is possible to do this. And I'm not just talking about narcotics, but anything that needs being faced up to in your life. When you've got somebody like yourself saying, it is possible to do it and I'm doing it now and I've done it, it suddenly makes you face up to the fact that you need to do the work. And for some people in your network, that's too much for them to take on. Would you say that you experienced anything like that?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, 100%. Because like you say, you trigger other people's demons, don't you? When you're like, oh, I'm this shiny new, don't do drugs anymore. And like you say, it then, because I know from when I was that person, I didn't want to be around people who were, they were the boring ones. They were the ones that and like you say, at a deeper level, it's like, how can they do it? And like, why? How can they be that person and I can't? Why am I still here? And they're all of a sudden off on this other journey, And yeah, it definitely, and also, like just moving through everything that comes with rehabilitation. Like you've got to rehabilitate yourself because all I ever knew, I got on drugs when I was 12. So, so I had never had a relationship where I hadn't been, getting bang on it, at weekends. And so I didn't know how to relate to people where I wasn't, out of my brains, which is really, it's really challenging, because you just take it for granted that humans just relate to one, like we just, it just happens, but it doesn't. It actually you have to teach yourself to be transparent and authentic, and to sit with those massive feelings that drugs took away. And it have to deal with drugs, you know what I mean? So leaning into all of that, and those terrible thoughts that come up of like, my anxiety would tell me like, you're a weirdo, Fiona. You're a weirdo. And I would manifest that, and people would treat me like I was a weirdo, and I'd be like, oh God, what's wrong with me? And like, just want to hide away. And it's such a massive, massive journey that I think if people have never taken drugs and had that and made that transition, they'll never understand how dark and heavy it is. But it really is. And when you start to speak up for yourself, and you start to say, well, actually, I didn't really like that, even conscious conversation can trigger people, and they're like, I don't know who you are anymore, and I quite frankly don't want to be part of it. I want to be part of what you're
Yeah.
saying and do it, because it can be so threatening to their nervous system, because they're used to a version of you who didn't speak up for themselves, who numbed out all the time, who was a complete people pleaser, who didn't know about authenticity, and was too scared to be authentic because of that backlash, because they were too scared of abandonment and rejection. And so, it's like leaning into that and being like, okay, I'm going to stay with me because it's the most powerful thing I can do for myself, and see what happens here. It's not nice when it happens. It's never nice. But it is imperative to our journey and our story that we do learn to do that for ourselves, because we want the people who can hold the version of us now. Like, we want to evolve, and we want those who evolve, like who can who can take all of us to come with us. Not just the ones that are like,
Yes.
I only accept you when you make me feel comfortable, which
Yeah.
we all do to each other unconsciously. But it's like, that's why the self-reflection is so important, because it's like, where am I being that way to myself or other people? So we're literally always becoming that better version, that better version, that better version.
And you said something really interesting, and wow. I mean, the fact that you shared that you've been, a large chunk of your life as a different person, and everyone else knew you as a different person. And regardless of that, you said, this is not something I want to be right now, so I'm going to change that. And you've now made sure relationships, by the sound of it, boundaries are respected. You stand up for yourself. You now know your own worth and your value. So you know what you're bringing to the table, which means your husband would treat you the same as well, because they're going to treat you how you treat yourself and how you respect yourself.
Absolutely.
If you've got listeners who perhaps are not at that stage where they have perhaps met romantic partners that are not respecting them or valuing for who they are, what would you say to them?
I would say I would literally just say, just use these tools and techniques, use them because they work. They really genuinely work. Just literally, reparent yourself. That is the most important aspect, I think, where we're going back to those younger versions of ourselves that learn that we were, that learned that we weren't valuable, which is such a lie. So just going back with those parts of ourselves and working out what it was that they needed from their caregivers or whoever it was that was around them at that time. What was it that you needed from those people that they weren't able to give you, and you weren't able to voice, and you start filling your own cup with, like, how can I energetically give this to myself, and then how can I start to convey that to other people outside of me, so that, and also we have to get used to holding those feelings, big feelings inside of our body. And so I love to use the emotional freedom technique, which is also known as tapping. So we tap and we give the energy inside of our body. We work out where is it? Like, for me, it's always around my throat and my heart, usually. And you give it a shape, a color, a texture, and you bring your awareness to the body, and you start to allow it and feel it and be okay with it and hold it. And and this then helps you to bring a different version of you into your relationships, because now you're bringing your body and your feelings along with into a conversation as well, which it is going to be, you have to take one step at a time. You have to do it gently, and just keep remembering who and what you are, and that you have to be with you. You have to bring all of you and convey that to people outside of yourself. And when those big feelings come up, you hold them every time. You hold them. Don't ever make yourself wrong. Like, just hold it and just be with it and give it the love and give it the compassion and give it your understanding and give it your time. And then the more you do this, the more you're going to start valuing yourself. That is valuing yourself. That is
Yes.
giving yourself that emotional availability that probably no one else was able to give you when you were younger. And now, hey, guess what? Guess what we're attracting? Someone else who's emotionally unavailable. So now we have to start to bring all of ourselves. And the most scariest bit, let them fall away if they're going to, because you have feelings. Because we have to allow for our own feelings. We have to be all right with the fact that we have feelings, and that we're going to be with our feelings, and that we're going to convey our feelings. And if they're not, then they are not that person for you.
And then that's the harsh reality, right?
Yeah.
Either they're not the person, and even if even if you communicate, and this is often what I've witnessed in relationships when individuals are coming and they've got some challenges, is that they may not have even communicated that with themselves. As you said, you've not even acknowledged that those big feelings are coming up, as you're expecting the other person to know it when you yourself haven't drawn attention to it. So unless they're telepathic,
Yes. Yeah.
and they've got nothing else to do but you focus in on what's going on in your body, in your life, how else are they going to know that? So it's so important. So if we're going to communicate that with our partners, we first need to check in and see what it is that we need to communicate with them about. First of all, we can't put all the onus on them and expect them to know what's going on in our body. They're not our therapists.
Yeah.
They're our partners, like you said, right? And it's a partnership. They're not there to decode everything that's going on. And as you said, and it was so nice, like I felt so warm when you were saying these things, to accept those feelings with kindness, to nurture them and make you human. And you've said that quite a lot. Remind yourself that you're human, and these emotions will come up. It's time to express them. It's time to accept that they're part of you. Don't push them away. And that helps you accept your whole self.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can 100% tell everyone out there that when you do that for yourself, the person who is able to hold that, like, they will show up. They will, because you're doing it for you.
Yes, exactly. You're not doing it for the purpose of finding someone else. You're in your energy trying to work through it, and they come, right? I wanted to hone in on projects that you have got upcoming that you're excited about, that you wanted to share with your listeners about.
Great. Yes, I have just created a free conflict resolution guide. And so, yeah, please go on to Instagram under Consciously Loving Me, and you can click on the bio and you can download it for free. And also there's a nervous system regulation technique on there as well, which is a free resource. So by all means, click onto that as well and get that. And I'm just literally creating a course right now, which is all about how attachment injury affects our relationship, how we relate to ourselves and other people, and and how we deal with conflict resolution, or the lack of it, which is usually the case. Yeah. So yeah, it's just to help people, because it's the conflict that really, like, how we deal with that is either the glue that binds the deeper bond together with our partner, or the wedge that is going to slowly drive us apart. So it's really,
For sure. I'll make sure that I post all of Fiona's links with this podcast episode. So anyone who wants to get in touch with her, got all the avenues and, guides that you're creating. And it sounds like such a holistic way to work through conflict resolution. I feel like it's something you've created with your whole heart, and what is needed in the world, but also what you perhaps were missing when you needed it. the most?
Absolutely, absolutely. I always needed an older Fiona, which she probably did take my hand at some point, because I'm really into the reparenting. So, future self probably took my hand all them times before, and led the way. I feel like it's so needed and it's so valuable, and I'm so passionate about what I want to give to people, because I know how much I needed it when I was younger, and how much it would have helped, years ago. At the same time, you've got to surrender yourself to the fact that your life is your life. We walk the path we do because it's meant.
It's all for learning, right? It's ones that you've massively learned from and are continuing to learn from. It's something that I always admire you for. You're a lifelong learner. After everything, and you've only shared a snippet of what you've had to endure in this life and choose to work through and learn. For those who perhaps are feeling feelings of desolation and despair, what message would you say to them?
Don't give up hope. Do not give up hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There really is. I've been to the most deep, dark places, and honestly, there really is the most beautiful reality out there that you can create. I promise you, everything passes. Everything does, even though it seems like it won't in that moment, because we're maybe, in that negative cycle, which is totally natural and normal. Again, it's part of our human experience, and it's okay. Like, there are people who are safe, and we can create safety in our body.
Thank you, Fiona, for sharing and feeling safe enough to share what you've been through, what you've created now in the world. Like, you are a creator, you're a born creator, and to turn around what you've been through into something not only has helped you, but is now helping other people.
Absolutely.
Do you have any words of final wisdom?
Last words of wisdom. Just know that everything is inside of you. The power. I love the end of Wizard of Oz. It's like, Dorothy, the power was always inside of you. I always refer back. I love it. I love it so much, because it's true for every one of us. The power is inside each of us, and it is there as long as we are able to turn inwards, and we're able to look at ourselves and to hold ourselves and to start creating this, moving through different versions of us. And yeah, it really is, there really is a magic inside of us. We are so powerful, and it just takes for us to look in. We get so fixated on the outside world, don't we? Oh, they're bad and rough. But yeah, it really is just a case of, like, what is this situation teaching me? What is it teaching me? What is this situation teaching me? And just keep self-reflecting. And, if you keep doing that, then, one day you will wake up and you'll be a completely different person who is, just who is getting to understand their power, and, hopefully starting to embody that, you know. So, but like you said, I do have my moments, where I'm kind of like, like everyone, but but yeah, it really is inside of us.
As you rightly reminded us, we're human, right? We have those moments, but you pick yourself back up, whichever way, in whatever time you need, and you find a way back, right? As Dorothy did with Toto.
Back in Kansas.
Absolutely. Fiona, thank you again for coming on Neuroscience Unplugged, where we are able to share your story and journey of resilience.
Thank you so much for having me.